I woke up today feeling the California sun hitting my face through the huge windows of my new mansion in Beverly Hills. I ran my hand over my Egyptian cotton sheet and smiled, thinking about the long journey from my little apartment in Silicon Valley to here. 10 years building my tech startup, countless sleepless nights, and now, at 35, I've finally earned my spot in this exclusive neighborhood. But not everything is perfect in paradise. While admiring the view from my infinity pool, I noticed a figure standing on the other side of the fence. Ashley Morrison, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, was staring at me with that look of disdain that would soon become all too familiar in the coming months. At that moment, I had no idea that this woman would turn my life into a real nightmare, or that I'd end up using my business skills in a way I never imagined. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this. The first confrontation happened during my launch event. I organized a fancy cocktail party to meet my neighbors and build connections. Everything was going perfectly until Ashley showed up uninvited, champagne glass in hand, loudly commenting on how the neighborhood was changing. In front of a group of guests, she made sure to point out that Beverly Hills had always been a stronghold of true class, not internet nouveau riche. I kept my cool even when she started openly questioning where my money came from. After all, how could someone so young buy a $15 million property? The situation got worse the next week. During an important virtual meeting with investors, Ashley showed up in my garden claiming that my irrigation systems were damaging her property. Even after I showed her that everything was fine, she insisted on calling a city inspector. I soon discovered that she'd been the president of the neighborhood association for 15 years. Her influence was impressive and scary. In less than a month, I received 3 notices about supposed building code violations. My employees were constantly stopped and questioned about their work permits. The peak was when she started spreading rumors about illegal parties at my house. In reality, they were just business dinners with potential partners. But Ashley had her own version of events, and I soon realized I was dealing with someone who wouldn't hesitate to use every trick in the book to get me to give up on my Californian dream. I decided to take a diplomatic approach and requested a formal meeting with the neighborhood association. I put together a detailed presentation about my company, my plans for the property, and my commitment to the community. To my surprise, most of the members seemed open, until Ashley took the floor. With her calculated smile, she listed endless concerns. The noise from my backup servers, the coming and going of strange people, which were really just my software engineers, and even the glare of sunlight on my windows that, according to her, disrupted her morning yoga routine. I hired a professional mediator, hoping we could find some middle ground. During 3 exhausting sessions, we tried to set up some ground rules. Ashley agreed to everything, only to go back on every agreement the next day. The mediator, frustrated, admitted he had never seen anything like it in 20 years of his career. My lawyer suggested tougher legal measures, but warned that lawsuits could drag on for years. Besides, Ashley had deep connections in the local legal system. Her late husband had been a respected judge, and she made sure to mention that at every turn. I tried one last personal approach. I invited Ashley for a coffee in my garden, hoping that a frank conversation could settle our differences. She showed up with her landscaper, insisting that my palm trees were a few inches off the city's alignment code. It was during this conversation that I realized no friendly solution was possible. Ashley wasn't interested in compromise or agreement. To her, I represented a threat to her status quo, an unwelcome reminder that the world was changing. Watching her dramatically gesture about the placement of my plants, something shifted within me. Years of building a company from scratch had taught me that sometimes you have to think outside the box when conventional solutions fail. If Ashley wanted war, it was time to use my strategic skills in a new way. After the last confrontation, I spent an entire week developing my plan. As the CEO of a tech company, I knew the best strategy was to combine innovation with precision. I started by installing an ultra-sophisticated security system, with high-definition cameras placed strategically and imperceptible motion sensors. I hired a team of hydraulic specialists to modify the pool system. We installed special valves that would let us drain the water in minutes, all controlled remotely via my smartphone. The trick was to keep everything looking normal. The pool still looked beautiful and inviting, but now it was armed with my secret weapon. At the same time, I discreetly hired a concrete company. The deal was simple. They'd be on standby, ready to act at a moment's notice upon my command. The truck would be parked out of sight, on a side street, waiting for the right moment. The most delicate part of the plan was the timing. I needed to create an irresistible situation for Ashley, something that would draw her in like a moth to a flame. Using contacts in Silicon Valley, I organized an exclusive event at my house, supposedly a meeting with top investors and tech celebs. Strategically, I leaked information about the event on social media frequented by the Beverly Hills elite. I knew Ashley wouldn't be able to resist showing up to supervise the action. I placed digital influencers strategically, ready to document everything that happened. For 2 weeks, I tested the system several times in the middle of the night. The draining worked perfectly, and the concrete could be pumped with pinpoint accuracy. I calculated every variable: the ideal concrete temperature, drying time, safe depth. There was no room for error. I set up an emergency protocol with a medical team on standby. After all, as much as Ashley deserved a lesson, I didn't want to cause any real physical harm. Everyone involved signed strict non-disclosure agreements. The final element of the plan was documentation. I positioned discreet microphones all around the pool area, ensuring that every word from Ashley would be recorded. I knew she'd try to twist the facts later, so I needed airtight proof of her actions. I set up a control room in my office, with monitors covering every angle of the property. From there, I could coordinate every phase of the operation with military precision. My experience in managing complex projects was about to be used in a completely new way. On the night before the event, I did one final check on all systems. The weather forecast was perfect, the equipment was calibrated, and my team was ready. Sitting in my office, looking at the monitoring screens, I felt the same rush as when I launched my first product. The only variable I couldn't control was Ashley herself, but knowing her patterns, her routines, and her compulsive need for control, I was confident she'd take the bait. Tomorrow would be the day Beverly Hills learned that the new generation wasn't to be underestimated. The day of the event arrived with an electric energy in the air. Important guests began arriving, and, as expected, Ashley showed up casually in her own garden, watching every move. The pool area looked stunning, decorated with elegant floral arrangements and sophisticated lighting. I noticed her making 3 hushed phone calls, probably to other association members. From the camera corners, I saw her face contort in outrage when she noticed several Teslas and electric Porsches arriving. Every new guest coming through my gate visibly increased her irritation. The crucial moment came when Jennifer Lawrence stepped out of her electric SUV. Ashley couldn't contain herself. It was the last straw to see a traditional celebrity mingling with tech folks. Exactly as I had planned, she stormed onto my property, crossing the garden with that all-too-familiar authoritarian stance. Discreetly, I activated Phase 1 of the plan through my smartwatch. The cameras began recording in high definition, and the microphones caught every word of her furious rant about how I was destroying the historic character of the neighborhood. I kept my cool, letting her take center stage. Ashley began circling the pool's edge, dramatically gesturing to my guests about how people like us were ruining Beverly Hills. When she reached the perfect spot, right in the middle of the pool, I gave the signal. The hydraulic system started working silently. The water began draining so subtly that no one noticed at first. Ashley was too busy with her monologue to realize the water level was gradually dropping. Meanwhile, the concrete truck was positioning itself silently. The guests, all pre-instructed, kept neutral expressions, with some discreetly filming on their phones. The tension was palpable. It was when Ashley, at the height of her performance, decided to deliver her final blow. She announced that she was officially expelling me from the neighborhood association, and that she would take legal action to force me to sell the property. In that moment, she made a fatal mistake. The water level had already dropped considerably, and Ashley lost her balance. When she tried to recover, she realized she was stuck in something much denser than water. The panic in her eyes when she understood what was happening was instantaneous. The concrete began filling the pool at a carefully controlled pace, not too fast to be dangerous, but enough to create an embarrassing situation. Ashley was trapped up to her knees, her Chanel dress ruined, her dignity washing away along with her mobility. I approached the pool edge with a perfectly rehearsed, worried look. "Ashley, let me help you. Looks like you're in quite a concrete situation." The irony wasn't lost on the guests, who couldn't hold back their smiles by now. The plan was working exactly as intended. Ashley was exactly where I wanted her, literally and metaphorically caught in her own trap. Now it was time for the next phase, turning this moment into something she would never forget. Within minutes, the scene turned into a viral spectacle. The influencers I'd strategically positioned started live streaming. Ashley, still stuck in the slowly hardening concrete, watched in horror as her humiliation spread across the internet. Old-school socialite tries to boot a tech entrepreneur and gets stuck in a concrete pool. Headlines started popping up in real time. The video of her storming onto my property and her prejudiced rant against the new generation of residents went viral instantly. Mark Zuckerberg reposted the video with the caption, "When the old world meets the new." Elon Musk tweeted, "Beverly Hills, we have a concrete problem." The hashtag #YourConcreteKarma began trending worldwide. While the firefighters, that I'd already had on standby, worked to free Ashley, I improvised a speech for my guests. I talked about inclusion, about how innovation and tradition can coexist, about how true luxury lies in the diversity of ideas. The cameras captured every word. Tech media jumped on the story. TechCrunch published an extensive article on the generational conflict in traditional neighborhoods. Business Insider produced a short documentary titled Silicon Valley versus Beverly Hills, The Clash of Worlds. Ashley was finally rescued, her face red with anger and shame. Her designer dress was ruined, but her pride took an even bigger hit. While she was being escorted off the property, tweets and memes kept multiplying. Local celebrities who had always feared Ashley began to speak out. A famous actress revealed how she'd been bullied by her in the past. A film director shared his own story of harassment by the association. The party, which was meant to be a formal corporate event, turned into a spontaneous celebration. Young entrepreneurs and entertainment industry veterans mingled, laughing and sharing stories. The invisible barrier that once separated old and new Beverly Hills was finally crumbling. Journalists were desperately trying to score interviews. Offers for adaptation rights of the story for streaming started pouring in. But I maintained my professional stance, refusing to fuel the spectacle any further. The most surreal moment came when Ashley's daughter, a young entrepreneur in sustainable fashion, approached me to apologize. "My mom is stuck in the past," she said. "Maybe this will force her to see that times have changed." As the night went on, the story kept growing epic proportions on social media. Memes, remixes, and parodies multiplied. Ashley inadvertently became the perfect symbol of resistance to change in an ever-evolving world. Watching everything from my office, I realized I had achieved something greater than simple revenge. I'd sparked a necessary conversation about social evolution, about the need to build bridges between different generations and cultures, and all with a touch of concrete. In the following weeks, the legal fallout began. As expected, Ashley filed a lawsuit for moral and material damages. Her lawyer, a pompous old-school gentleman, presented an impressive dossier of accusations. But I was ready. My legal team presented all the meticulously collected evidence: recordings of her previous invasions, records of false complaints, testimonies from other residents who had suffered from her tyrannical behavior. The turning point came when we presented documents showing irregularities in the management of the neighborhood association. For 15 years, Ashley had manipulated votes, steered contracts to friends' companies, and used association funds for personal events. An independent audit revealed that she had created specific rules to benefit only a select group of residents. We discovered that several other young businessmen had given up moving to the neighborhood because of her bullying tactics. The judge, ironically a tech enthusiast, watched the videos of the incident with particular interest. "Ms. Morrison," he said, "your behavior exhibits a consistent pattern of discrimination and harassment." The defendant only solidified the evidence. Ashley tried to play the tradition card, arguing she was only protecting the neighborhood's historic character. But when former association members began testifying about her years of tyranny, her case crumbled like a sandcastle. Her lawyer made one last play. He claimed I had premeditated everything, presenting the pool incident as an elaborately set trap. My lawyer simply responded by showing the numerous private property and no trespassing signs that Ashley had consistently ignored. The cherry on top was when we presented a detailed report on the concrete used, specially formulated to be non-toxic and easily removable. "My client," argued my lawyer, "took every precaution to ensure that no one got hurt, even while your property was being invaded." The lawsuit was dismissed in record time. Ashley not only lost the case, but was ordered to pay substantial compensation for years of mismanaging the association. The judge even added a personal remark about how technology had served justice. Worse than the legal defeat was the revelation that Ashley had lied about her social credentials. Investigations revealed that her supposed aristocratic lineage was fabricated. She had grown up in an ordinary suburb of Phoenix. The final verdict was broadcast live, at the judge's request, who apparently had developed a taste for streaming. Ashley left the courthouse through the back door, while hashtags like justice served, and taller tech wins dominated social media. That night, sitting in my office, I reflected on how the technology that built my fortune had also helped me defend my place in the neighborhood. Justice, like concrete, sometimes needs time to set. But once it hardens, it becomes unshakable. The transformation in the neighborhood was immediate and surprising. With Ashley out of the association's presidency, a new board was elected that included a healthy mix of traditional residents and new tech industry folks. I decided to turn the incident into something positive. The pool, now internationally famous, was renovated and transformed into a community event space. The first event was a charity hackathon that raised funds for local public schools. I set up a mentorship program connecting young entrepreneurs with experienced neighborhood veterans. Surprisingly, some of Ashley's old allies were the first to volunteer, eager to distance themselves from her former reign. The story continued to have unexpected repercussions. A home security startup approached me to develop an anti-intrusion system inspired by the incident. Beverly System became a popular term to describe creative solutions for neighborhood conflicts. Ashley moved to a condo in Palm Springs, but her legacy remained as a reminder of the cost of prejudice and resistance to change. Occasionally, tourists stop in front of my house to take selfies, calling it the concrete mansion. The most rewarding part was seeing how the neighborhood became a model for integration between different generations and sectors. Pool parties now regularly bring together Hollywood big shots, tech titans, and traditional families, all coexisting in harmony. Even Ashley's daughter launched her own startup in the neighborhood, specializing in sustainable fashion. Ironically, my investment fund was one of the first to support her project. Sometimes, progress comes from the most unexpected sources. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this. 1 year after the incident, I organized a special event to celebrate the neighborhood's new phase. The old pool, now transformed into a modern amphitheater with innovative design, hosted the first Beverly Hills Tech Summit. The event gathered over 200 people, including many residents who had once blindly followed Ashley. The irony wasn't lost when Paul, her old right hand in the association, took the stage to present his new sustainable tech company. The change in the neighborhood went beyond the surface. The old discriminatory rules were replaced by guidelines that simultaneously promoted innovation and historical preservation. Century-old mansions now house promising startups, keeping their original architecture but with modernized interiors. I received an Entrepreneur of the Year award, not for my business achievements, but for catalyzing a cultural transformation in one of Los Angeles's most traditional areas. During my acceptance speech, I mentioned how sometimes you need a little concrete to build bridges. The most surprising moment was getting an anonymous letter from Ashley. In it, she admitted that the incident forced her to confront her own prejudices. She said she was undergoing therapy and, for the first time, questioning values she had always taken for granted. Today, when I look out the window of my office, I see a different neighborhood. It's no longer a battleground between the old and the new, but an example of how tradition and innovation can coexist and strengthen each other. The lesson I learned? Sometimes, the best revenge isn't to destroy your opponent, but to transform the very battleground. And if it takes a few cubic meters of concrete, well, let's just say that in Beverly Hills, even the toughest lessons come with a touch of glamour. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this.